The overall podcast industry is expected to reach a big milestone in 2021 when ad revenue reaches $1 billion. And in the modern world where the word trillion gets thrown around like it's nothing, say with the Fed printing money or big tech market cap valuations, the reality is $1 billion still does matter. Another way to look at it, here are the growth rates in the podcast industry by ad revenue and ad revenue as a portion of radio ad revenue. So let's break down the industry a little bit. By 2022, there will be 132 million podcast listeners in the US. Today, there are 850,000 active podcasts available in 100 languages and totaling 30 million episodes. The growth in the podcast space has kind of been amplified by the smartphone revolution, since mobile phones is how most people listen to their podcasts. But you might be surprised to find that podcasts have been around for a long time, since the early 2000s. And the word podcast is just a blend of the word iPod and broadcast. If you look at the podcast industry by age, you can see that it's young people, particularly Gen Z and millennials, that fuel this industry. Here are the numbers by specific age cohorts. When the total reward in a market continues to grow, it becomes more lucrative. And when it becomes more lucrative, it starts to grasp the attention of more power and influential entities or folks. This is true in all aspects of business, but is also true in the podcast industry, where we are now seeing big personalities starting to enter the space. Why? Well, $1 billion will do that. Michelle Obama and Joe Rogan are two prime examples of this. Joe Rogan's podcast is the most successful in the podcast industry. Michelle Obama is still new to the game. Her podcast came out sometime in July. But even in the short time frame, the Michelle Obama podcast has picked up some traction. On Spotify, if you look at top podcasts by country, you will see that Michelle Obama frequents the top charts. If you look at the timeline of podcasts, some very big moves have been happening recently. One that you may have heard of is Joe Rogan's exclusive deal with Spotify, valued at over $100 million. What does this mean? Well, Business 101, the money you invest in something, you'll only really be doing if the reward or the outcome from that investment is greater. So with Spotify investing $100 million plus in Joe Rogan, it tells me that they see the podcast space as increasingly lucrative. 20% of Spotify premium subscribers listen to podcasts, and 20% is a big part of their overall audience. We can expect the future of podcasts to amplify and replicate some of these trends. I suspect there will be more big names that enter the space with their own shows. And I think Spotify competitors such as Apple may be looking to respond to this exclusive deal with a big exclusive headline deal of their own. My personal favorite podcasts, The Motley Fool, The Economist, and Call Her Daddy by Barstool Sports. That's all for today, guys. Thank you for watching, and I want to wish you all a safe and happy Halloween.